Great. Okay, so we've just got a few participants that are now joining. So it's great to see that some of you are coming into the session. Good afternoon to you all. We'll just wait a moment for those people who are just joining a bit last minute to come in. Okay, I think we'll make a start. So hello everyone and welcome. Thanks so much for joining this webinar today about employment. Just a little bit of housekeeping for you all is that we do have closed captioning available, which you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen to be able to access that. There wasn't anyone that indicated the need for a BSL interpreter today. However, you know, we will be recording the event and a transcript will be made available. And if there are any challenges accessing that, then we can look to see if we can get this translated into a BSL after the event. In terms of how this session is going to run, we've got guest speakers today from LiveU, Daniel and Sam, and we will also be joined a little bit later by the Ability people. And Matt Smith is also going to be sharing his experience as a recent Snowden scholar and about that transition he's gone through, well, pretty recently and currently moving into the employment and sharing his insights towards that. So I thought we'd just give a little bit of background about the reason for this webinar and the Disabled Leaders Network, as I think we've got a few new members who have joined us today from the Disabled Leaders Network, as well as some people who've maybe been in it since it began. So it was started in the 2019-20 academic year, and it really was about bringing together Snowden scholars to provide that peer support, to engage with each other and to kind of build capacity within a group of really highly talented disabled leaders. And this year we're looking to expand that group, so to go beyond the current Snowden scholars and to reach out to other people, applicants, as well as Snowden alumni, in terms of creating this group and this networking opportunity to truly build capacity within the group. So we've got Helen here from the Snowden Trust, so I'll just let Helen say a quick hello from the Snowden Trust.
Yeah, hello everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself to those of you who I haven't met. So I'm Helen, as Kate said. I am Chief Executive at the Snowden Trust, and we believe that this network has the power to be really, really important and really useful. But obviously that only works if it works for you. So I say a plea now that please always keep in touch with us. Tell us what works, tell us what doesn't work, tell us what's missing, and we really want to make this something that really adds value for all of you. Enjoy the session.
Thanks, Helen. And it looks like we've just been joined by the Ability people as well. So we shall move on to you guys a little bit later on in the session, but thank you and welcome. So I thought we would kick off with LiveU, with Dan and Sam giving their experiences about their organisation. I will let them introduce their organisation and tell you a little bit about its beginning, as well as their experience moving from student life into graduate. So I shall pass over to you guys.
Hello everyone.
I'm my PA business partner.
I'm Sam.
The LiveU is a business which helps severely disabled people live independently with the help of PAs. To understand LiveU, it helps to understand my background. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. I went to a mainstream school and it worked very well until sixth form. But when I went into sixth form, I got an electric wheelchair. I couldn't get that wheelchair into any of the classrooms, and that had a big impact on my social life and my confidence. So from there, I moved to a special ed college for disabled people, and I made a lot of disabled friends, um, and that was a turning point in terms of independence, because when I lived at home, I was very reliant on my parents to help me get out and about, which was very limiting in terms of, again, my social life. And I felt that quite deeply. But yeah, I moved to college, made little friends, I grew confidence and independence. And then when I went to university, I sort of ran with my independence. I went clubbing. It was great for me to make the most of my freedom. I had such a good time at uni. I partying online. It was so fun. And again, I felt myself growing confident a lot. And I owe all to the relationship I had with my PAs. My PAs, they're not carer figures. Alexander, my age, we get on very well. We're more friends than a carer.
Yeah, so I started being Dan's PA in 2016, and I had literally graduated like a month before I started with Dan. So when I graduated, I kind of knew that I didn't want to go straight into the corporate world immediately. I kind of wanted to do something a bit different, something, well, to be honest, I just wanted to stay at uni. And this job came up where it gave me an opportunity to do something I didn't know the PA job existed at that point. And I saw this job advert and I read the description, and it was sort of saying how, you'd be helping someone with a disability access all parts of uni life, not just the academic side, but the social side. And I'd been a promoter for like 3 years for club events. And I was like, well, I could certainly show them the nightlife side of things. And the idea behind being a PA was it would go really well and I'd be like best friends with them, or it just wouldn't go very well. And, but I'd find out either way. As it turns out, me and Dan are into this, mostly the same sort of things. We have similar interests, we're a similar age, and that helps too. And because we were able to develop such a close relationship, I think it gave both of us the confidence to really push the limits of what a PA and someone in your position can do. So like, not just going to nightclubs, but even things like going on a holiday without your parents. I think when we went to Florida, that was the first holiday you'd been without your parents.
Yeah.
But having the relationship between us being like such a high level of trust, that enables people in a similar position to really get out there and experience all aspects of life. So yeah.
Yeah, Dan, a very unique PA. I think it's fair to say you can barely look after yourself.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's me. But that's actually what I'm needing. I just needed a working pair of hands and someone that would help me get out there and give me a confidence to go, socialize rather than be a carer type figure. And yeah, I've been confident, but at the same time, I saw my friends from college and they had a very different experience. They were going through PAs and extraordinary rates, a constant turnover of staff. And you can see the impact that had on their confidence. even now, they're finished uni, and some of them have gone back home to their parents, and they're not really doing a lot. And even people who have moved into their own home, they're not, they don't go out that much. And I feel that is because a lot of severely disabled people are treated kind of in a similar way to how you treat a child. So they're cared for, and there's someone that needs to be protected and looked after. And the downside to that is you're shielding them from reality, and you're preventing them from integrating. And that is the problem that I wanted to solve. I wanted a care company that didn't sort of, that wasn't paternalistic, that wasn't treating disabled people as children, but instead of a carer, a PA is only there to be their home. So that was my original vision. And from there, it developed a lot. It was quite hard. I knew I had something unique in the PA relationship, but it was very, very hard to convince people and parents to trust a pair of 24-year-olds with their children. So getting our first client talk.
Yeah, more or less a year to get the first one.
Yeah, but once we had our first client, we were able to prove ourselves. And what I found out was counsel and social care is really, really bad for people like me. And so I was able to triple the amount of funding my first client received. And the reason for that was I found that councils up and down the country are neglecting the law to about as much as you could physically ignore the law. And that had a real big impact on people with severe disabilities. And since then, I found more clients, and every client I've had, I've either tripled or quadrupled the amount of funding they receive. And all I do is essentially look at what the council do and compare that to the law. The law is incredibly well written, but I don't feel like no one reads it. Councils definitely don't read it or they ignore it. And now, essentially what they do is they create blanket policies. And because a lot of the people that are helping aren't severely disabled, they're not disabled people who rely on care gap for literally every element of their life. They're not designed for that type of person, and they're very inadequate. So we came along, we found a unique selling point of increasing people funding and then that allows us to, yeah, that allows them to pay PAs considerably more and attract better PAs, and the PAs are happy on the wage. There's smart people that are in the job for the right reason. They want a fulfilling career. That it's not just the only job they can get. I feel a carer, it's not seen in the very, what's the word?
I suppose the right way to phrase it would be like, it's generally a stereotypical care worker might not have a degree, for example, whereas the people that we're able to attract because we get a high amount of funding, which means we can give them a good wage, we're likely to get graduates and people like that. And they're the sort of PAs that are really good at helping someone with a disability start a professional career themselves. So if someone with a disability has a master's degree, chances are they're going to go on to do something, specialist. And having a PA who is highly educated themselves is a much better dynamic between them rather than anything else we find.
Yeah. And other thing I found in setting it up and engaging with clients and local authorities and care companies is there's a very palpable lack of disabled people's input. You can tell there's a huge disconnect between the people making decisions about disabled people and disabled people. And I think that's the problem with wider society. Even let's say you go to a disabled toilet and a company spent a lot of money building that vicinity, but then they'll go ahead and put a tiny handle or like a lock that you can't turn as a disabled people. I think that everywhere. Like the people building things for disabled people, you can tell are not disabled. And nowhere else would you have an industry that is viable where you have such a huge disconnect between the people running it and the people using those services. Even I look at electric wheelchairs and I can tell the person who designed that isn't going to sit in it all day. And yet what I found was with my work, it's not even that difficult to make a huge difference. I.e. crippling people funding. All I do is kind of talk common sense. I would say to disabled people, I'm into a huge voice of disabled voices and at the top of decision making. What else do you need to talk about?
I think that
No, that's really so insightful, guys. Thanks so much. It sounds like you found just such this huge gap where you then thought this is an idea that you can take forward. We might save some questions at the end if people have any kind of specific questions around the actual start of your business or how you found the journey to go from this idea to transforming it into the business that it is today. But what we'll do is we'll save those thoughts for the end, and we might head over to Matt. I'll also post the LiveU link into the group so people can access that and find out more about you.
sounds good.
Thanks very much, though. We might come back to you in a bit. And Matt, are you there to share your experience?
Hello everyone, I'm absolutely thrilled that you've joined the meeting today. And before I start, I would just like to remark on the previous speech that we've heard from the previous speakers, because I resonated so much with everything they just said in terms of the experience of social care and even the design of wheelchairs. Everything reflects my experience. I suppose my angle in this seminar is going to be to provide you with an insight of the process of trying to identify and secure a job, because my understanding is that a lot of the people in this seminar are where I was maybe 12 months ago. So I think it's helpful just to give you a brief background about myself. So my Snowdon journey really started on quite a somber, maybe perhaps even morbid note, because my grandfather actually died in the last year of my undergraduate studies, and I had no sort of emotional or cognitive bandwidth to really dedicate myself to the job search while I was trying to write my dissertation. So I had to move back to Liverpool, where I'm from, and my mum just couldn't manage physically to care for me anymore. So it really put a strain on the relationship. I love my mum dearly, but when, as you all know, if you rely on care assistants, it does really like test relationships. And so she just said to me, I just can't physically manage anymore, Matt. So we had to move me into a supported living accommodation service. And I'll be honest, it really wasn't supported. The title of that service was so much of a lie, it's unbelievable. And I found, to be honest, that the people who live there, if they were able to communicate independently, effectively by themselves, sadly they were treated much better than those who couldn't. So there was a big disparity. And what I ended up doing, with permission from those people who did struggle to communicate, is I ended up adopting the role of their advocate, and I had to liaise with councils over the phone because they weren't happy with the care they were receiving, etc, etc. So then I started to think, maybe this is the kind of role I would like to occupy in the future, because the aspect of my undergraduate education that I enjoyed the most was being a representative to my fellow students. So I do like that sort of work. So, but the problem was I had absolutely no funding to even consider undertaking a postgraduate degree. So I was searching for opportunities left, right and centre, and then I discovered the beloved Snowdon Trust, and my life really just elevated from there. I filled out the application and I was absolutely astounded when I received the offer. And so then I was accepted into Snowdon, and I was able to actually move out of that accommodation, which was absolutely dreadful, and move down to London again and live independently with personal assistance, obviously. And so Snowdon in that sense was really liberatory for me. But then I had to start thinking about my future career as well, because obviously you do the degree and there has to be some goal at the end, some ultimate outcome. Now I was toying with the idea of doing a PhD, but I thought at this moment in my life, that's not what I ultimately want to be doing. I want to be immersed more in the real world. So I started filling out ample applications, so many, and I cannot tell you how many rejections I received. And I'm sure this is not just a disability thing, it's everybody nowadays who applies for roles is going to get rejected. That said, I do think it affects disabled people disproportionately often. But so I just want you to know that if you're not successful to begin with, please do not lose faith, because eventually, you know, I know people say all the time, but each application you become sharper and sharper in your skills, and eventually I'm sure you will get somewhere. So I've made some notes here of just some pieces of advice I can give you. So it's natural to be worried. I was really worried because ultimately the position you're going to be in if you don't find employment is jobless. And so that is the ultimate outcome. But don't feel bad to be worried, because that worry is going to spare you to actually be determined enough to carry on completing the application. So what I'm saying is use those negative emotions as a motivator if possible. Cast your net wide. So don't just think I'm going to apply for this one opportunity. Cast your net as wide as possible, but at the same time remain focused on the particular area you want to move into. For instance, it would be useless for me to apply for investment banks because I just couldn't present the most authentic version of myself in the interview, because people look for genuineness, and that's not what I want to do. The next point would be, when you're writing applications and things, this is a very practical point. If you don't use a screen reader or anything like that, you can go onto Microsoft Word, and if you click the review tab, it says read aloud, and then a voice actually reads back to you what you've written. That will help you catch errors, because it's like having somebody there to read back what you've written, and it really does improve the quality of your writing when you can hear your own mistakes. Like I've said, if you get rejected, please keep applying, don't give up. And then on the issue of disclosure, I would say, yes, if you feel scared or shy to disclose your disability, that's more than understandable. What I would say though is you're missing out on a big opportunity to market the disability, and we don't often think of disability as an advantage maybe for an employer. There's something that we maybe feel that we've got to conceal, but some qualities here that I've noted a disability could offer you are the following. So I live with PAs. I have to manage them on a regular basis. I have to do rotas. I have to coordinate staff. I have to organise their preferences in terms of holidays, etc. That is management experience. So straight away, for example, if you live with PAs, you've actually got management experience that you can market. Also problem solving and planning, you know, all the additional planning disabled people have to go to achieve a really simple task. That is a nightmare and that is a nuisance, but it's something employers look for in terms of, can you creatively solve problems? Another thing is that having a disability, you often have to stand up for yourself, and that often involves Googling, for example, legal terms, legal terminology, what the law is on a specific issue. So you actually develop quite astute legal knowledge in some cases, and then also just being able to empathize and interact with people. And I think because disabled people have such a wide breadth of experience, that means you're able to relate more and connect with the issues of your colleagues. But one more thing is that even if you don't want to disclose, it's probably useful to give your employer some idea of what is going to be needed for a particular assessment. So you don't have to tell them your whole life story on an application. If you can just tell them what they need to know at a particular stage of the application process, I think that will be more than sufficient. And honestly, and I mean this genuinely, I really want to form a connection with you. I really like mentoring people. So I'm going to leave my email address somewhere, maybe Kate can facilitate this. And if anybody does need any help with employment, feel free to contact me. Currently in September, I'm going to be joining the civil service. So I am planning to move into the professional sphere myself, but I'd love to help other disabled people on that journey. So feel free to contact me if you do have any questions. Relatedly, does anyone have any questions now at all? Feel free to put it in the chat. It is.
Yeah, if anyone does have any questions at all for Matt or for Liviu, then you can pop it into the Q&A chat. But we can also come to those who are attending at the end of the session and just ask, and I can see if we can promote you to speak live as well if you want to be able to ask the question directly. But thank you so much, Matt. That was really insightful and I think so helpful to hear from somebody who's kind of going through that process at the moment.
The advice at the beginning of the seminar was to talk as slowly as possible, and I've just realised I've been talking at the speed of light for 5 minutes, so I apologise to the person captioning. I am sincerely sorry.
Frankie's frantically typing away, but I think thanks, Matt. It was you had so many helpful tips to offer to the floor. So thanks so much for sharing that. And I will, if you're happy to share your email around, because I'm sure there are people who are going to go through the process that you've just been through that could really learn a lot. Okay, so we're going to head over to hear from the ability people now. We've got Adil and Liz here, and I think that what Matt's just been speaking about leads really well onto your guys' organisation. So I shall let you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about the story behind it and the services you offer.
Hi everyone, sorry we were a bit late to the party, but it just seems to be it's webinar afternoon and we came straight off one to here. So thank you for having us. So I'm Liz Johnson. I'm a co-founder of the Ability People and I'm the managing director. But I guess I'll tell you a little bit about how the Ability People came to be, what it is, all of that, and then Adil is one of my consultants who works within the team, so then he can give you the perspective from his perspective, actually, because he isn't a graduate, but he is a scholar, and so he has got a job, and he's very good at it. So I guess
you flatter me.
I know that's the second time in 2 hours I've told him he's good at what he does. I'm gonna don't let it go to his head. But I think the point is that what Daniel was saying and Matt, like a lot of those points resonate, and they're important to note. And a lot of the reasons that we end as a community of people with disabilities, we end up doing what we do is exactly because of the things that both of those guys highlighted. And so the Ability People is essentially, well, we are a consultancy organisation staffed entirely by people with disabilities or barriers to conventional working environments. And we work from wherever, whenever suits the individual as a team towards the overall goal of creating meaningful employment opportunities for people with disabilities, but also normalising differences within the workplace. So that actually we move away from this idea that we have to provide more information than anyone else. And we move away from this idea of reasonable adjustments, because again, who determines what's reasonable? Like, who makes that call? And actually, decades ago, reasonable adjustments was a good way to instantly try and make your environment more inclusive. But it's 2021. And actually, we should just appreciate that society is diverse and generally authentically inclusive one way or another, and so why do we have to provide more information to access the same equitable opportunity? So that's ultimately the basis that we work on. But essentially, a bit about me. So I was, prior to doing what I do now, I was a Paralympic swimmer, and so I was very fortunate that I had an opportunity to pursue a career at a time where the Paralympic movement was developing and evolving. And so I got treated as an athlete who happened to have a disability, which is what we see the Paralympic movement is as now. But it wasn't always like that. And when I was first starting out, people were like, well, what even is the Paralympics? You know, like how do you not swim in circles? Like all of these different things. Like I would go to swimming clubs and competitions and I'd have to swim with the 9-year-olds even when I was 15, and it wasn't, I was there and I was able to participate, but I wasn't authentically included. And so I was really, like I said, I was really fortunate that I went through the evolution of parasport in a time where it really learned those lessons and it really did become authentically inclusive. But if you speak to people who don't have disabilities, not many of them want to be Olympians or Olympic champions. And even if they do, not a lot of them have the capability to do so. So my frustration was always, well, why does anybody with a disability have to have been a Paralympian or do something extraordinary in order to be given an opportunity and a platform? And so the way that the ability people came about was I was looking into why the employment gap for people with disabilities was so huge, but not only why was it so big, why had nobody done anything about it in the last decade? I realized it came down to a number of things, but actually the three things that we focus on at the Ability People is the reality that people had a lack of education around what disability actually was and what it represented, a lack of exposure to it, and a lack of empathy to how difficult it can be to navigate a world that isn't set up for you. But as both Dan and Matt alluded to, the soft skills that you develop and you possess from being a person who has to live with a disability in said world that isn't set up for you and constantly navigate and overcome barriers, and not in an inspirational way, just in a very factual way. There are barriers that exist that people don't think about because when they're planning accessibility, they're planning it from their perspective and what they interpret it to mean to have a disability, not actually consulting with people that have disabilities. So I wanted to create an environment fundamentally where I could do something directly to influence and impact positively the amount of people who worked, who had disabilities. So we're doing my bit to reduce the gap, which is why everyone at TAP has an impairment. And we removed all of the unnecessary barriers to enable them to work. But similarly, that's not enough because I can't employ every single person with a disability at the Ability People because it's not suitable for everybody. But there is something out there for everybody. Everybody is capable of doing something very well. And actually, we shouldn't be shoehorned into doing something that somebody else thinks is acceptable for us. If we want to pursue our own desires, our own interests, further our abilities in a certain area, then that's our prerogative. And we shouldn't carry the burden of other people's not understanding what equity looks like and not understanding that I don't need your pity and I don't need you to do it for me. I just need you to appreciate that I might do it differently to you. And so that's exactly what we do at the Ability People. We look to increase people's exposure, empathy, and education around difference as a whole, but particularly from an angle of disability. Because Matt's right, like you shouldn't give up on your dream because of a negative experience or a negative understanding, but at the same time, you shouldn't accept poor treatment. You shouldn't accept people just assuming you can't do things, because actually there comes a point where it's not good for you. It's not good for you. It's not good for your mental health to keep carrying the burden of other people's ignorance. And so, but similarly, we are not all in a position to advocate for ourselves. We don't all have the platform to advocate for ourselves. But as a team of people, generally, if we tackle this together, then actually at some point someone listens. And I think that's why I wanted Adil to join me today, because actually when I was setting up the Ability People, of course, like I said, I was a Paralympic swimmer, so I had that career. But when I retired, I assumed I was going to be an accountant, because I did go to university and I did business management and I specialized in finance, because when my dad was asking me what I was going to do for a proper job, because swimmers don't earn any money and Paralympians, they definitely don't earn any money, I was like, oh, well, I'll be an accountant because I like maths and I like money. So that was my planned career path. But I realized that I had an opportunity to do more. I had an opportunity to help more people, and I had a voice that people might actually listen to. And we would all be naive, and I would be very naive to think that part of the reason that the Ability People has been able to do what it does, and me be able to do what I do, isn't because I was a Paralympian and isn't because I've got a gold medal. But I take you back to my point at the beginning, that's not okay. Like that 1% of the global population go to the Olympic Games. And so it's fair to say that the same could be said for people with disabilities. So what about the other 99%? And why don't they get to do something that they could be equally brilliant at? Why is it that only people that are good at sport? Because let's face it, a lot of people don't even like sport, don't want to do it. And Adil will take great pleasure in telling you that that's him. But the point is, they still deserve an opportunity to do something that they want to do, not just something that someone else has made them a decision that they should be doing. And so by doing that, yeah, okay, we've opened some doors, but then Adil, I've already said he's brilliant at what he does, and he is, but he's not brilliant because he's got a disability. He's brilliant because he has the skill set to achieve. And actually, but the point is, if we didn't create the ability people, Adil wouldn't be doing what he's doing now. He wouldn't, and not because he's not capable, but just because the opportunity would never have arisen. But also, the role models don't exist. And because the role models don't exist, that's not just for the individual or us as people with disabilities, that's for the people that are guiding us on our education and guiding us on our experiences and guiding us on our opportunities. That is so it's about broadening people's horizons. And so for me, that's what the ability people does. It brings to life, we are the personification of what we're trying to get other organizations to do, because people, rightly or wrongly, seem to need to see things in action to believe them. So like, if anybody ever feels like they want to come and join the team at the ability people, get in touch, because we're always looking for more consultants. But the point is, like, Adil will tell you now about what he does and how he does his job and why it works for him.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, as Liz said, never wanted to be a Paralympian, do not have the drive, determination, or near enough as much competitiveness as Liz had. Yeah, so I'm a consultant with the ability people. I live with a condition called muscular dystrophy, which means progressively with time, my muscles get weaker and weaker. I had a life expectancy of 18. I'm 26 now, so smashed it. Take that, all you so-called medical experts. But essentially, like quite a few individuals with disability, I went to special needs school. And when I left at 18, I had no intention of ever applying for a job, because I thought, you know, I'd never been exposed to individuals in similar situation to me who needed 2 PAs, right, just to access the world doing a job, right? So I thought, well, the world of work isn't for me. And I went on, and I, like a lot of people with disabilities, I decided I'd go to college, do some part-time courses and just do some voluntary work. And luckily, I built up somewhat of a network before leaving school. So I was doing some voluntary work for some charities, and this through one of those charities that I met Liz. And we'd had conversations in the past, nothing too detailed, but when Liz had this crazy idea that she wanted to start up this company, and she got in touch with me to ask if I wanted to be a part of it, I jumped at the chance, because I was always looking for employment. But I think for a lot of us, when we have a disability, we think, oh, you know, will the other person accommodate it? The stress and headache I'm going to have to go through, get that, is it worth it? And then in the back of my mind was always this life expectancy thing as well. And, you know, all this, you're thinking, what, you know, kind of thing. But I'd put myself in a position where I was in quite a few networks, and that's how I sort of came across Liz. And when Liz offered me the job, like, we went to interview, and, you know, I'm telling Liz and her business partner, you know, I have X, Y, Z need, and, you know, like, my working day don't start till midday, I'm gonna need this and that. And they're like, doesn't matter, we want to work with you, we'll figure out a way around it. And that's the attitude that the ability people have, and that's the kind of attitude we try to sort of expose our clients to as well. But one of the things I'd say is, looking back when I was 18 and not applying for jobs, I was wrong. I very quickly realized that when I went into these clients and spoke with them, they want to do the right thing, right? And they do want to employ people with disabilities. It's just they're unsure of how to do it. So the advice I'd give is always, if I said there was a regret, there is a bit of a regret that I didn't apply, right? Because I think I may have got somewhere. But I think when you're applying, you need to be, number one, confident in yourself, confident in your abilities. So like Liz and Matt spoke about, you've got skills that are inherent within you because of your disability that are not in other people who don't have a disability, right? Just naturally, evolution, right? If you ask me, we are the superior people, but that's a bit of a bias. But so have that confidence, and when it comes to disclosing, there's lots of different opinions around about, should we disclose, shouldn't we, when should we? I'd always say it's down to the individual. It's up to you. If you feel like you want to disclose at the application process, go for it. If you feel like actually I will only disclose when I face an obstacle in the process, that's fine as well. Because more often than not, an organization, as part of the application recruitment process, have a central point of contact that you can contact with those queries and questions, particularly for graduate schemes. But I think be brave, be bold, and don't be afraid to offer organizations throughout their own recruitment processes solutions. So if somebody's saying, oh, we can't quite adapt the test like that, offer them alternatives. So, okay, rather than, if you live with autism or neurodiversity, which doesn't allow you to properly show off your skills through the process that they've designed, then say to them, instead of that, could I do this? Right? Is that option available? And then if they say no, right, then you can say to them, well, actually, maybe you should consider it. And if they don't, then say, well, I'll do it, but it's not going to show that my best capabilities. And also, it's always okay to find people, right, who have been through that process, like Matt, like the ability people, like Daniel as well, who can be there to offer advice and guidance, right? And it's always okay to ask for advice. At the end of the day, when I look back at myself, I remember when we went to our first board meeting, and I turned to Liz, we're waiting to go in and to present, and I'm absolutely bricking it. And I'm turned to Liz and I went, Liz, what if they just say, like, go away, we don't want any of this? Or what if they, what if, like, I say this about the candidate or that? And so Liz is like, it doesn't matter. It's like, we're confident in what we're doing, right? And we're going to do it, right? And so in that sense, sometimes, and it's okay to ask for that advice. So, we'll share our emails, but yeah, we're always up and happy to, send advice via emails or even have a quick Zoom call to offer advice and guidance as and when, you feel like you need it. But yeah, that's us. I think we've taken up quite a bit of time, so I'll shut up now and let somebody else take the floor.
No, thank you so much, Liz and Adil. That was really so interesting to hear about the ability people, the story behind it, and then also the personal experience that you've had, Adil. So that was great. And I think you've really touched on so many points that has already kind of been covered by both Dan and Matt in terms of thinking about trying to create these opportunities and that kind of culture of change around things. Especially, Liz, when you're talking about the role model aspect. And I think that's something that Disabled Leaders Network are part of trying to drive that and build this community and this group of leaders that can support and network and work with each other to help kind of really push this change that's needed. There are a couple of questions that have come into the Q&A, and so if anybody else does have some, then please do answer. I'll put them into the chat, and I can either We can answer them on here, or we can promote you to speak if you'd like to. Matt, I can see that you're typing an answer to a question in the chat, but I might invite you to answer it to the floor if you're happy to. And the question is about disclosing, and how do you deal with colleagues and employers that don't have such positive views about disability?
This is a question that took me a few minutes to contemplate myself. Thank you so much for asking it to the person who wrote the question. In my view, over the years, I've found that negative attitudes towards disability generally stem from a lack of exposure to disability. I don't know if other speakers would agree. So when you're in the office with those colleagues, once they see how capable you are and the similarities between yourselves and them, those negative attitudes quickly disappear. I think there's been a statistic somewhere that says like most people believe when they're asked that they have nothing in common with disabled people. So they don't, for example, think like a disabled person could support the same sports team as them or could go to the same, you know, shopping mall or whatever. People don't think that you have similarities or commonalities with each other. And when they learn about you as a person rather than you as just a blanket generic disabled person, you know, those negative attitudes quickly disappear. In terms of disclosure, I don't think you should feel a pressure. You shouldn't carry the weight of trying to appease an employer who might have a negative attitude towards disability. And I know that's easier said than done, because at the end of the day, you have to find a way to feed yourself, and it's about securing job opportunities. But really, by contemplating what if the employer has a resentment towards me because of my disability, you're putting extra stress on yourself, because ultimately the outcome will be the same. If you're not going to get the job because of your disability, that's going to be the same regardless. At some point it will come out, so you may as well just put everything out there and sell yourself to the positive employers.
Thanks so much, Matt. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add to that point there. Liz, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, Matt's right on so many levels, but I think, like, if you take it back a stage, you've got to get to the point where you're in that position to be able to convince them that you're just like them and show that. And it's sometimes the barrier is prior to that stage where they won't even, like, they don't even invite you to the party or you. And so then I think it's very much about contextualizing it for them and actually, like, saying, well, if it was you and you weren't allowed to do this because of the month you were born in, how would you feel? And like just making it so that they can actually genuinely relate to it, because I think a lot of the time people get confused, and this links to the question about inspirational porn for people with disabilities. Is like, it's that idea between sympathy and empathy. And it's like, I don't need your pity. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I just need you to understand how it feels. And so quite often it's about, like I said, finding something that is relatable to them, that they will appreciate and they will understand. And it's like it is, sometimes it's showing them, sometimes it's speaking to them about it. But I think, because Matt's right, like once they get to know you and they spend a bit of time with you, they'll completely see that you're just a human. And actually sometimes you got really bad taste in football teams, or you got really ridiculous opinions, but they're your opinions just like everybody else. But I think it takes a lot often to get people to that point where they have that level of interaction with you. And so in the beginning instance, it's about calling it out in a way that they will understand it. Because and similarly with the inspirational porn element of it, like say no, you've only, and Adil always talks about inspirational porn quite well, but the idea around like, well, it's not that big a deal getting up and getting myself dressed. But yes, it is, in spite of all of these other things or the rubbish transportation system. But in terms of like what I've actually done, why is that amazing? Because then they'll go, oh yeah, because you use a wheelchair, or because you haven't got like perfect vision, or you're like, well, so what? Like, that's just a part of who I am, just like the color of my hair or the color of my eyes.
I think the reality is that sometimes just asking the question of why, somebody, what was inspirational about that for you? Because the reality is, when people don't know, and this is human nature, it's like when we see a baby take its first steps. We know every baby's going to take its first steps, but in that moment, if you're there, right, you see it and you go, oh, wow, that was fantastic. Can't believe I was actually there, right? And sometimes what can happen is when people, able-bodied people, see people with disabilities, particularly physical disabilities, do something, they'll stop and look. Because again, it goes down to that exposure piece. They haven't been exposed to that before, and so they'll see it, they'll find it inspirational. One thing I would say is becoming less and less with the next generation of people. I found, so particularly individuals of like my parents' age who are in their late 40s, 50s, still have that view. But I'd say the younger next generation are a bit more open-minded when it comes to that. And finally, like, just to say that, even within the disabled community itself, there's nothing wrong with finding somebody inspirational, but you have to have your reasons. I don't find the fact that Liz was a Paralympian inspirational because she was swimming with a disability, because I live with a disability day to day, so does she. But what I found inspirational was, how the hell can you commit so many years of your life towards such a singular goal, still with the high possibility that you might not achieve it? Like, that for me was like, because in my mind, I'm always like, have a backup plan, have a backup plan, have a backup plan. So it's, so I think just clarifying that. And sometimes, people find you as inspirational porn, that's their thing. So what? All right. Sometimes people aren't going to budge. You just got to move on, kind of thing.
Thanks so much, Adil. I just wanted to come to Dan before we're just kind of closing up. If you've got any comments to add into what's already been discussed around the idea of the inspirational porn, or any dealing with kind of negative comments within the workplace or within the business sphere which you are currently within.
Yeah, in my experience, it's easy to convince yourself that people have negative views of disability. But in reality, I think they look not used to disabled people, and they're a little bit almost frightened of offending you. Yeah, I would be careful not to jump to the conclusion that they don't like you because you're disabled, or they have negative views of disability. But I think what that means in practice is you have to kind of go a lot further than able-bodied people to build relationships. Yeah, but basically, don't assume that people have negative views of disability. It may appear that way because they don't quite know how to approach you, and they're worried about offending you. Or in my case, people are very worried about not understanding me, and they can be very awkward. But yeah, I wouldn't interpret things like that as, intentionally not liking you or not wanting to interact with you because you're disabled.
Thanks so much, Dan. I think that, there's been so many like common themes that are coming up, and some such great insights from everybody who's spoken today. So it is 5 o'clock now, so we won't run over because people often have things to head off to straight after, but I will share contact details. I'll send a follow-up email after this to attendees, and share the links that are in the chat, as well as contact details with those that are happy for them to be shared. But just thank you so much for everyone who's come along and spoken and shared their insights. It's been a really brilliant to hear from you all. But yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks. Good to meet you all.
Yeah, great to
Likewise.
meet you all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I'm going to make sure I download that transcript.
Hello, I just did it as well.
Oh,
Sorry,
great.
I think I just missed a few bits of Liz's. I wasn't too hot on it today, so apologies. But yeah, it's good. It's all
Okay.
there.
Great, thanks so much. That's really helpful. That's great.
Should I send it all over to you, or do you
Yeah.
want me to sort of tidy it
No.
up or anything?
That would be, don't worry about tidying it up, because I can have a look through it and do it. So that's really great. Thanks so much, Frankie.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.